The first thing I remember is the color white. White walls, white sheets, and a sharp, clean smell that could only be a hospital. My head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache. My closest friend, Mark, had been sitting by my side for days, his face a constant mask of worry. He was explaining things to me, trying to fill in the gaps my memory had left after a car crash. He talked about my job, our apartment, inside jokes I couldn't recall. Everything seemed vaguely familiar until he mentioned a name that drew a complete blank. Chloe. Mark watched my face, waiting for a reaction that never came. When he realized I genuinely had no idea who he was talking about, a strange, worried look crossed his features. Leo, it's just us here. Are you messing with me? Is this some kind of weird reverse psychology thing to get my sister's attention? I was just puzzled. Your sister? My eyes must have shown my complete disbelief. No, I really don't remember that name. Who is she? You're not lying? He looked at me with suspicion. Swear it. Faced with his doubt, I didn't hesitate to raise my hand and swear. Seeing me so serious, Mark looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He grabbed my shoulders, shaking me gently. You really forgot everything, but you specifically forgot my sister? I didn't understand what was so shocking about it. Who exactly is Chloe? I asked, my voice laced with confusion. Mark's expression turned complicated, a mix of pity and frustration. He sighed and began to explain. Chloe is my sister. Remember when you came over to my place years ago and saw her for the first time? You fell for her, hard. You spent the next 7 years chasing after her. As he went on, my mind felt like it was short-circuiting. So, she's my girlfriend now? I asked. Mark smiled, but it was an awkward, painful expression. No. My sister was always cold to you. She was in love with someone else, a guy named Julian. He was her first love, and he broke her heart when he left. She ended up in the hospital from drinking during their breakup and never really got over him. In fact, he said, his voice dropping, the reason you were in that car accident, she was supposed to give you a ride, but she ditched you in the rain to go pick Julian up from the airport. That's why you were driving alone. His words left me speechless. My expression must have been a mess of confusion and disbelief. So, you're telling me she was always cold to me, liked someone else, and even hurt me for this other guy? Why on earth did I have a thing for her? Are you messing with me, Mark? Why would I lie about this? Mark shook his head, pulling out my phone and handing it to me. Everyone knows you were head over heels for my sister. I took the phone skeptically. I tried to unlock it, punching in a familiar string of numbers, my own birthday, but it failed. I tried a few other combinations I thought I might use, but nothing worked. Your password isn't your favorite actor's birthday anymore, Mark said softly. It's my sister's, 0715. Following his instruction, I typed in the numbers, and the phone unlocked. The moment I opened the photo gallery, my screen was flooded with thousands of pictures of a single woman. Her face was beautiful, exactly my type. But as I scrolled, an uneasy feeling crept over me. The photos were all candid, clearly taken without her knowledge. In every single image, her eyes were cold and emotionless. Then, I opened the Notes app. It was filled with entries detailing Chloe's likes and dislikes, a meticulous documentation of a one-sided love affair. I read an entry from Valentine's Day. Another well-rehearsed confession, another rejection. Chloe, you said there was no future for us, but I can't let you go. You got drunk again tonight and mistook me for him, calling his name over and over. You said you couldn't forget him, that you'd rather wait even if it's hopeless. For a moment I felt like we were the same, both of us pathetic in love. Even without the memories, the raw pain and frustration etched into those words hit me hard. It felt like a stab to the chest, a deep ache that seemed to have no end. My eyes stung. Stunned, I couldn't seem to calm the turmoil inside me. The silence in the room stretched on until Mark finally spoke. "So, what are you going to do? My uncle is a top psychiatrist. He's overseas right now, but we could try to get more treatment." I took a deep breath. Even without remembering, I get the feeling that liking your sister was a painful experience. Maybe forgetting is for the best. I lowered my head and, one by one, deleted every photo and every note. Mark watched me in shock, about to say something, but his phone rang. After the call, he picked up his bag and left in a hurry. "I have to head home for something. Leo, take care. I'll be back soon." The door closed with a soft click. Just as I was about to rest, the landline in my room rang. It was my father. "Leo," he started, "remember when I mentioned that childhood engagement? It's been postponed for years. Have you thought about it at all?" My father sounded braced for me to refuse, like he always did. This was probably just a last-ditch effort. But after a few moments of silence, I surprised him. "Sure, Dad. Once I get things sorted out here, I'll come home and we can move forward with it." My father was so shocked, he could barely speak. "You... what? You don't love your best friend's sister anymore? You insisted on staying in W City just to chase her. What changed?" I wasn't sure how to explain the memory loss and didn't want to worry them about the accident. After a moment, I gave a vague answer. "I just don't like her now, and I don't think I will in the future." After the call, I estimated how long it would take to wrap things up and bought a plane ticket to my hometown for 2 weeks later. With the ticket confirmed, a nurse came in to take me for a follow-up appointment. As I sat in the wheelchair, I looked up and saw a familiar face. I had just seen her in thousands of photos. It was Chloe. The icy stare from the pictures was even colder in person. "How did you know I was here?" she asked, her voice sharp. "You even stalked me to the hospital?" I hadn't expected my first real encounter with her to go like this. Her hostility was a shock. I paused, then replied, "You misunderstood. I wasn't stalking you. I was in an accident on the highway, and I'm here recovering." Chloe frowned, about to say something else when a man emerged from the room behind her. She immediately went to his side. "Julian, you just got over a fever. I told you to rest. Why are you up?" Hearing the name, I instinctively looked over. He was a tall man in a white shirt. Julian. Our eyes met, and he smiled slightly, looking from me to Chloe. It was stuffy inside. I just needed some air. "Chloe, who's this?" Her gaze narrowed. "My brother's best friend, Leo. He's a designer in our company. We're not that close." Julian smiled warmly. "Leo, nice to meet you. I'm Julian. Your head is all bandaged up. Did something happen?" I nodded. "Yeah, I was in a car crash. Mild concussion, lost some of my..." Before I could finish, a nurse called out from behind me. "Patient from bed 1124, Leo. It's time for your checkup." Hearing my name, I didn't have time for pleasantries with people I barely knew. After a quick goodbye, I wheeled myself away. I could feel her watching me go, a rare second glance. She was probably wondering why the guy who was supposedly obsessed with her had just left so easily. Later that day, after finishing my tests, I was heading back to my room when I saw the nice weather and decided to take a stroll through the garden downstairs. Just as I reached the pond, Julian came walking toward me. "Leo, out for some air? What a coincidence," he said, his tone friendly. I was surprised to see him again, but we exchanged a few polite words. He seemed eager to chat and soon offered to push my wheelchair. "Chloe got a call and had to handle something, so I'm a bit bored," he said. "Since you're a friend of Mark's and you've known Chloe for so long, I wanted to ask you something. I heard from friends that some guy has been chasing Chloe for 7 years. Do you know who that is?" And how does she feel about him?" I froze for a second, then quickly composed myself. "I don't really know," I said calmly. "But if someone has been chasing her for 7 years and she still only has eyes for you, I think it's pretty clear that you're the one who matters most to her. Everyone else is just background noise." Julian was taken aback by my certainty, and then a pleased look spread across his face. "You know about me and Chloe? Does she talk about me often?" I nodded slightly, remembering what Mark had told me. "Yeah?" Julian's expression brightened. He launched into their story, telling me how she had pursued him in college, how devoted she was, how she had proposed and he had turned her down to study abroad. "I knew she never got over me, so I decided to come back," he finished. "She's been taking care of me since I've been unwell. I think she wants to get back together, but she hasn't said anything. I thought maybe she was interested in that other guy, which is why I wanted to ask you." I listened to his stories quietly, feeling nothing but a strange detachment. "I think since she cares so much about you," I said with a small smile, "she probably wouldn't just casually mention getting back together. She might be planning some kind of surprise." Hearing this, Julian seemed more at ease. Just as he was waving goodbye, his phone slipped from his hand and fell into the pond. He instinctively bent down to get it, but lost his balance and stumbled right in. Seeing him fall, I was stunned for a moment, then quickly turned my wheelchair to go get help. But just as I turned, Chloe came dashing over. Without a moment's hesitation, she jumped into the water to save Julian. As he coughed up water and started to breathe again, the worry on her face began to relax. I watched her reactions, about to call for a doctor, but she interrupted me, her voice cutting like a knife. "You pushed him into the water on purpose, didn't you? And now you're trying to sneak off." I didn't expect her to misunderstand so completely. He fell while trying to pick up his phone. I didn't push him, and I was going to get help. She glared at me coldly. I was gone for 1 minute, and suddenly Julian is in the pond. Who else could have done it? She summoned 2 large men who seemed to be her bodyguards. "Throw him in. Leo, out of respect for Mark, I've tolerated your pestering. But Julian is my bottom line. If you don't learn your limits, you'll face the consequences." The bodyguards stepped forward and pushed me, wheelchair and all, into the pond. Cold water rushed into my nose and mouth. I struggled to breathe, thrashing in the water as the wound on my leg reopened, the pain sharp and searing. My strength faded quickly, and as I shivered and slowly sank, the last thing I saw was Chloe leading Julian away without a backward glance. I don't know how much time passed. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in a hospital bed, looking up at Mark's worried face. "I was gone for a few hours. And you end up nearly drowning?" he said, his voice shaking. "The doctor said if they'd pulled you out a minute later, you might not have woken up. You scared me to death." Thinking about what happened, I went silent. I wanted to tell Mark the truth, but then I remembered that Chloe was his sister. I just shook my head, my voice weak. "I'm fine, don't worry." Mark's eyes were red. Over the next few days, he stayed with me, constantly trying to bring Chloe into the conversation, as if testing me. "You know, Leo," he said one afternoon, "I know my sister. If anyone else confessed to her as much as you did, she would have found a way to get rid of them long ago. The fact that she's tolerated you means she must have some feelings for you. She probably doesn't even realize it. Are you really going to give up?" If I had heard this right after waking up, I might have believed him. But after nearly drowning at her command, the idea felt like a cruel joke. I showed Mark the photos my colleagues had sent me over the past few days, pictures of Chloe shopping, eating, and going to the movies with Julian. My tone was calm. "She put up with me because of you, Mark. If fate wants me to forget her, it means we were never meant to be. The guy she was waiting for is back. It's time for me to let go of something that was never going to happen." Seeing that I had truly moved on, Mark didn't push anymore. He just sighed deeply, I wanted you two to be together more than anyone. Then you'd be my brother-in-law. But since you've decided, I won't meddle anymore. We'll always be best friends." I nodded, pulling him into a brief hug. After he helped me with the discharge paperwork, he drove me to a club. "You've been stuck in the hospital for so long. I'm throwing a party to celebrate you getting out." I didn't refuse. But when we got to the private room and Mark pushed open the door, we both froze. Sitting in the center of the room were Chloe and Julian. "Sis, why are you here?" Mark asked, shocked. One of our mutual friends explained that he'd invited her to make the party more lively. Mark looked like he wanted to turn around and leave, but I quickly pulled him aside. "It's fine," I assured him. "Since I've forgotten the past, seeing them won't make me sad." He relaxed a little, and we sat down. The whole night was noisy, but the atmosphere was strange. Chloe was all over Julian, blocking drinks for him, feeding him fruit. Her affection was on full display. I watched them quietly, feeling a slight tightness in my chest. But it wasn't pain. It was more like a confirmation that forgetting was a blessing. Mark, thinking I was upset, suggested we play some games. I had a lucky streak, winning round after round until I finally lost. Everyone cheered for me to do a dare, but I chose truth instead. Suddenly, all eyes were bouncing between me and Chloe. "Okay," someone shouted excitedly, "tell us about the most unforgettable romance of your life." Before I could respond, I saw Chloe's face change. She glanced at me, her eyes cold, a clear warning not to say anything crazy in front of Julian. But I didn't remember anything. To satisfy the crowd, I forced out some vague words based on what Mark had told me. "The most unforgettable. Probably my first love, I guess," I began with an open smile. "She was my best friend's sister. I think it was love at first sight. I wrote stacks of love letters and filled albums with her photos. Everyone knew how much I liked her, but she never liked me back." As I finished, the room fell silent. Julian, who had been watching quietly, grabbed Chloe's hand. "Chloe, you and Leo—" Her heart seemed to skip a beat. She gripped his hand tightly and denied it. "There's nothing between us. From start to finish, it was all his one-sided fantasy." Each word was sharp and decisive. She didn't stick around, grabbing Julian and leaving with everyone watching us with a mixture of sympathy and pity. Mark, who had been silent, couldn't take it anymore, and rushed out after them. I knew what he was going to do and quickly followed. I caught up to them in the parking garage, where they were already arguing. "He's my best friend, Chloe. Why did you have to humiliate him like that?" Mark demanded. "I put up with him for 7 years, she snapped back. "His affection just annoys me." "Don't worry," Mark yelled. "He'll never like you again. Especially not after you left him stranded and he got into a car accident because of you." "So what? Even with the accident, if I had to choose again, I'd choose Julian every time. If he's still bitter about it, tell him to stay away from me." The sound of a car door slamming echoed in the garage. I didn't want them to know I'd heard everything, so I quietly slipped away. Back at my apartment, I gathered everything I had ever collected that was related to Chloe and tossed it all in the trash. I spent the weekend packing, and on Monday, I handed in my resignation at work. The HR manager was surprised. "I heard Chloe was considering promoting you to head of design. Why are you quitting?" I just smiled softly. "I want to go back home for good." Later that day, Chloe called a meeting to announce the new design director. Everyone assumed it would be me. I was about to stand up and announce my resignation to get ahead of it, but she cut me off. "While Leo is skilled, his experience is lacking," she said, her voice cool and professional. "Therefore, I've decided to bring in someone with richer experience. Let me introduce our new head of design, Julian." The room was silent with shock as Julian walked in, a smug smile on his face. Some of the senior designers, who had more experience than Julian, spoke up, saying I was more suitable. Felix's face fell, and Chloe's expression turned icy. Julian graduated from a prestigious school and has countless awards, she said sharply. In terms of vision and capability, he's in a different league than Leo. The position of director goes to him. No discussion. Even with no feelings left for her, hearing her publicly tear me down was humiliating. As she left with Julian, the HR manager handed her my resignation letter. She signed it without even looking. That night, I treated my colleagues to a farewell dinner. The director spot doesn't matter, I told them, holding up the signed form, because I've already resigned. Today was my last day. The next day, I sold my apartment. Just as I was finishing up, I got a call from Mark. My birthday's tomorrow. You haven't forgotten, right? How could I? I had a gift ready. But I also planned to tell him I was leaving for good. I showed up late to the party at his family's mansion. From a distance, I saw Mark blowing out his candles, flanked by his parents, with Chloe and Julian standing beside him, looking like a perfect family. I decided to wait for him in his room to talk privately. I must have dozed off on his sofa because I was startled awake by the sound of the door opening. I thought it was Mark, but when I opened my eyes, I saw Julian. His gaze was hard. I thought you said you'd given up, he sneered. Why do you keep showing up in front of Chloe? She only has eyes for me. You'll never beat me. I was stunned by his aggressive approach. I'm just here for Mark's birthday. I'm leaving soon. Clinging to her was pathetic, he spat. Then he insulted Mark, calling him uninspiring. The moment he brought my best friend into it, my eyes turned cold. Does Chloe know you talk about her brother like that behind her back? He sneered. She cherishes me. What does it matter? He called us both shameless. That's when I snapped, I retorted, reminding him of how he'd abandoned Chloe and how Mark had never said a bad word about him. My words surprised him, and his fury boiled over. He threw a punch. I dodged and threw one back. We started to fight, a desperate, clumsy struggle. In the tussle, we knocked over a scented candle on the table. The flame caught the bedsheets, then the carpet, and in moments the room was filled with thick, black smoke. I tried to get to the door, but Julian shoved me straight into the fire. The searing flames licked at my skin, an unbearable pain that made me tremble. As I struggled to beat out the fire on my clothes, the bedroom door burst open. Chloe rushed in. Her eyes scanned the room, passed over me, and locked onto Julian. She ran to him, wrapping him protectively in her arms. My breath was weakening from the smoke. I lifted my burned hand and managed to grasp her leg. She glanced down at me, pulled her leg away, and walked off with Julian, leaving me behind. As she vanished into the smoke, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was in the hospital again, Mark crying by my bed. My hands were bandaged and in agony, but I managed a weak smile. There's something I need to tell you, I said, my voice hoarse. I've decided to head back to H-Town this afternoon. My family is pushing for that arranged marriage. I already have the ticket. Can you see me off? Mark was shocked, tears welling up again. He reluctantly went to handle the discharge papers. I had just changed my clothes when Chloe walked in, her expression cold. You attacked Julian and tried to burn him, didn't you? I felt nothing seeing her, just a weary emptiness. He told you that, and you believe it without any proof? No matter what Julian says, I'll believe him, she stated. I'm here to make you apologize to him. She grabbed my injured hand to drag me away. The wound bled again through the bandages, and I bit back tears of pain. The next moment, Mark came back and immediately shielded me. Move, Chloe commanded. He has to apologize. No way, Mark stood firm. There's a camera in my room. We'll check the footage. Just then, Chloe got a text. She glanced at it, swallowed her anger, and left. We'll check the footage tonight, she said as she slammed the door. Let's see what you have to say then. After she was gone, Mark tended to my wound, apologizing over and over. "Don't apologize," I told him, wiping a tear from his cheek. "We're not the ones who did anything wrong." An hour later, Mark drove me to the airport. As my flight was called, I gave him one last hug and turned to walk through the gate. Once on the plane, I deleted every contact related to Chloe. A final text from Mark popped up. "Leo, be happy. Don't worry, I'll clear your name tonight." I smiled as the screen went dark and shifted my gaze to the clouds outside. For me, the truth didn't matter anymore. Chloe and all the pain she brought with her had vanished from my life. I was leaving it all behind. Back in my hometown, I finally told my parents about the accident and the amnesia. They were horrified and immediately hugged me. Then, they let out a chuckle. "Silly boy," my mom said, her eyes soft. "There's no arranged marriage. We just made that up because we saw how miserable you were chasing that girl. We just wanted you to come home. You're free to be with whoever you want." Hearing their words, my eyes welled up. "Maybe losing my memory was a blessing in disguise," I whispered, hugging them tightly. "I'm not going to like her anymore." I spent 2 happy days at home and decided to start fresh. I sent out my resume and landed an interview with a company called M Group. On the day of the interview, I stopped for a coffee and accidentally bumped hands with a woman at the counter. "Sorry," I apologized quickly. She smiled. "No problem, I'm Sophie." She offered her hand. "I work at M Group too. We might be colleagues soon." I shook her hand. "I'm Leo. Nice to meet you." Little did I know how soon we'd see each other again. When I walked into the conference room for my interview, I was surprised to see Sophie sitting right in the middle of the panel. She was the manager of the design department. The interview went smoothly, and I got the job. After, Sophie stopped me. "What a coincidence. Since we're co-workers now, how about I treat you to lunch?" I wasn't used to her kind of enthusiasm, so I politely declined. But Sophie was persistent. She started sending flowers to my desk every day and asking me out to dinner. I always said no, worried about the complications of dating my boss. One day she asked me to dinner again, and for some reason I said yes. I wanted to clarify things. At the restaurant, I told her I didn't think we were right for each other. "Leo, I'm serious about you," she said, her expression earnest. I didn't know what to say. I ended up drinking too much and getting tipsy. The bottled-up frustrations came pouring out. "I've moved on from her, so why does it still hurt?" I mumbled, not even realizing I'd said it aloud. I showed her the faint burn scar on my arm. Sophie's eyes widened. She gently brushed her fingers over the scar, her heart aching for the pain I'd clearly been through. She leaned in and tenderly kissed it. "Leo," she vowed, "I'll help you let go of her and accept me." From that night on, things changed. I started to see Sophie not just as my boss, but as someone who genuinely cared. Meanwhile, I heard through the grapevine that things at my old company were a mess. Julian's incompetence had led to most of the design team quitting. Chloe was under immense pressure. One day, Sophie told me M Group was entering a major design competition. "The team wants you to lead the project, Leo," she said. Everyone in the meeting room nodded in agreement. Seeing their confidence in me, I accepted. The competition theme was the 4 Seasons. I decided to create a series of pieces. A few days later, I handed my designs to Sophie. "These are incredible, Leo," she praised. The day the results were to be announced, Sophie and I flew to the venue in W City. And of course, the first people we saw were Chloe and Julian. "Leo, what a coincidence," Julian said, pulling Chloe over to us with a smug look. "Is this your new girlfriend?" Chloe's expression soured as she stared at us. Before I could say anything, Sophie stepped in front of me. "Yes, Leo is my boyfriend. Please show some respect." She took my hand and led me away. Just as the results were about to be announced, the host came on stage with a grim expression. "There's been an issue of plagiarism," he announced. The screen lit up with two designs side by side. They were nearly identical. It was my design and Julian's. I looked at them, shocked. Julian stood up. "Leo plagiarized my design," he claimed, holding up a design draft. It was the original sketch I had made years ago and left behind at my old office. I knew it instantly. I had no way to prove it was mine. The judges reviewed the submission times. Julian's draft had been submitted earlier. The room started whispering, branding me a plagiarist. Desperate, I looked at Chloe. If she just told the truth, that the draft was mine, this would all be over. She met my pleading gaze, hesitated, and then looked away. "The draft belongs to Julian," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Any hope I had was crushed. I felt drained, struggling to stay on my feet as Sophie rushed to support me. Julian approached us, taunting me. I ignored him and turned to Chloe. "Ruby," I said, my voice barely steady. "Let's just consider everything up until now as my fault. Pushing me into the lake, leaving me in the fire, even this. Let's call it even." She paused, then finally managed a single word. "Fine." Back at the office, I submitted my resignation to protect Sophie and the company. She tried to stop me, but my mind was made up. I needed a break. Over the next few weeks, Sophie was my rock. She pulled me out of my funk, and slowly my feelings for her deepened. One evening, she took me to dinner at a beautiful restaurant overlooking the river. "Leo," she said, opening a small box to reveal a watch. "I like you. Will you be with me?" I looked at her. This wonderful woman who had stood by me through everything. The memory loss felt like a chance to restart my life, and she was the life I wanted. "Okay," I said. Stunned, she just stared at me. "Aren't you going to put it on me?" I prompted with a smile. Flustered, she carefully fastened the watch around my wrist. Our happiness, however, was short-lived. Chloe, having finally realized the truth about Julian after he tried to drug her, started trying to find me. She showed up at my apartment in my hometown, but I rejected her, finally telling her about my amnesia. She didn't believe I could have forgotten 7 years of obsession. She tried again, showing up with a sachet I'd once made for her. I tossed it to the ground. "I don't remember," I told her firmly. "Please stop bothering me." Sophie stood between us, a fierce protector. The final, terrifying chapter came a few days later. As Sophie and I were walking to a mall, a car suddenly sped toward us. It was Julian, his face twisted with rage. In a split second, both Sophie and Chloe, who had been lurking nearby, rushed to pull me away. Sophie got to me first, shielding me with her body as the car hit us. We tumbled to the side. My head hit the curb, and the world went dark. When I woke up in the hospital, the first thing I asked for was Sophie. She was in the room next door with a broken leg, but otherwise okay. As I lay there, a flood of images, feelings, and moments rushed back. 7 years of longing, of being ignored, of pain. The memories were back. Chloe walked into my room, her face full of concern. "Leo, I had no idea Julian would—" "Get out," I said, my voice flat. "Eric, so you remember now?" she asked, a desperate hope in her eyes. Jenny, who was now beside my bed in a wheelchair, looked at me nervously. I squeezed her hand and looked at Chloe. "Yeah, I remember," I said. "But why would that make me want to go back? For 7 years, did you ever show me an ounce of kindness? All the things that triggered my memories were my pain. Do you even have a single good memory of us?" She was speechless. "It's been 7 years," I continued, my voice softer now, more pleading than angry. "You're tired, and I'm tired. I have someone I want to spend my life with now. Please, just let me go." She left without another word. After she was gone, Sophie looked at me, her eyes hopeful. "When you talked about spending your life with someone, did you mean me?" I squeezed her hand tighter. "Yes, Sophie, I want to spend my life with you." Julian was arrested. His life was over. The plagiarism scandal was cleared up, and my name was restored. But none of that mattered as much as what came next. A few months later, as we recovered together, I asked Sophie to marry me. She said yes. I called Mark and asked him to be my best man. He was shocked but happy for me. The day before the wedding, he handed me a small, ornate box. "A wedding gift," he said. I opened it. Inside was a beautiful, handmade sandalwood comb. I stared at it for a moment before handing it back. "Chloe asked you to give this to me, didn't she?" He looked surprised that I knew. I once would have given anything for a gift like this from her. Now it just felt like a relic from another life. "I'm married now," I said. "It's not appropriate to accept this. Please return it to her." At the ceremony, as I stood across from Sophie, I felt a sense of peace I had never known. As the officiant told us to exchange rings, Sophie leaned in. Just before she kissed me, her eyes flickered to the back of the hall. I saw her give a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. "Were you signaling to someone?" I asked later. "No one important," she replied, smiling as she squeezed my hand. I let it go, focusing on the woman in front of me, her fingers interlocked with mine. This was my life now. This was my happiness. And I was never letting it go.